You forego the steady paycheck and you go for the 100% commission. In that moment, most would admit that they're after something different. And they're after a little more time freedom. They want control of their schedule. They want a more flexible schedule. They want more financial opportunity, right? More financial freedom. And then we kind of unpack that. What does that feel like? And we talked about that earlier. And then I say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your life and business feeling like how we just described freedom, ease, presence, joy, connection, travel, adventure, right? And most will rate themselves pretty low.
Welcome. I'm Amrita, and this is the Amrita Effect. Real conversations about identity, resilience, and becoming for women in the middle of figuring themselves out or finding their way back to who they really are. Welcome. I'm Amrita, and this is the Amrita Effect. Real conversations about identity, resilience, and becoming for women in the middle of figuring themselves out or finding their way back to who they really are. I am so excited to introduce our guest today. Erin Bradley is the founder of Pursuing Freedom, a coaching and training platform for real estate professionals, and the host of the Pursuing Freedom podcast. She is the best-selling author of Pursuing Freedom and built her career transitioning from the mortgage lending into entrepreneurship, coaching, and speaking, helping professionals design more sustainable and scalable businesses. Welcome, Erin. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. What an honor. I'm so also excited for you to be having this show and launching this. Like, what a gift to everyone in your orbit who's going to get the opportunity to be plugged into more Amrita.
It's exciting and frightening all at the same time, which I know that's a feeling that you're very well aware of and in tune with. So I wanted to start off our conversation and talk a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to, or what was that defining moment, or what inspired you to transition from that, mortgage lending into this, building this life around this concept of freedom.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about the defining moments, there's so many, right? And I'll come back to my story, but I was speaking at a conference recently talking about, have you ever broken up with somebody? Have you ever quit a job? And most people would raise their hand and say yes, in that, somewhere in their journey, they've done at least one of those two things, if not both. And when we acknowledge that, we look back and say, how long were you tolerating out of alignment before you had the courage to have the conversation, right? To make that bold decision, and how in that decision, you change the trajectory of your life. You change timelines. Like if you were still with that person, that partner, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to find the love that you're with today. Or if you were still in that job, you wouldn't be in the career you are today, right? And the fascinating thing about it is that we all have these defining moments. We oversimplify them, right? But when you look back, you realize that we all have the courage within us and the self-awareness to know when something's not quite right. And it's scary because we've been conditioned to believe that this mask of performance and pretending to be fine is the way to survive. And it's not meant to be survived. Like the journey of life is meant to be interesting and enjoyable and thriving. And I think we're all after the same thing, right? That's where Pursuing Freedom was born, is like being after this idea of freedom, and that freedom has a feeling, it's peace, it's presence, it's ease, it's connection. And I personally, my backstory is that I fell into the mortgage side of the real estate space in 2006. And I was definitely a free spirit who loved to travel. I traveled for a couple years after college, and I saw the salespeople, 100% commission people, coming into the office in jeans and a t-shirt and going to yoga in the middle of the day. And then they put on their suit and go to closing and come back with a big fat check. And I'm like, that's the life for me right there, right? I'm not really cut out for the corporate suit. So like, let me do this game, okay? So I go 100% commission in 2007, like a genius, right before the market crashes. And I do so with no financial safety net, no game plan, no confidence. Honestly, I was absolutely terrified of being seen as salesy. So much so that I just would not do most of what the antiquated sales tactic said I should do, right? I didn't even tell my friends what I did for a living. It was that bad, okay? So by the summer of 2008, I am maxed out on tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. I'm the opposite of rookie of the year. I'm fallen flat on my face, and I get a referral for a client, and it's July of 2008, it's middle of the summer, and I don't have enough money for gas to go meet this client. So I have to ride my bike 5 miles across town in the heat of summer, figure out what to wear to look professional and not be super sweaty when he gets there. So I get there early to let the sweat dry off. And then unfortunately, so did the client. And he introduces himself to me at the counter right as my credit card is being declined for a $2 cup of coffee. And the worst part is, if you think that's bad, the worst part is that's the card I thought would work. So I didn't know what to do because I thought if I try another card and another one gets declined, he's going to know the truth, right? I'm a failure. So I just lie. I'm like, that's so weird. It's my debit card. I'm going to have to call the bank. And he buys my coffee. So obviously I'm mortified. I'm dying inside. I have the meeting. After that, I call my dad for advice because he went 100% commission in his 20s many moons ago. And he's like, look, Erin, you weren't born yet. I'm the youngest of five. He said, but we had the electricity cut off and the bill collector's calling. And he says to me, do you think you're going to be good at this someday? And I'm like, I don't have any evidence to indicate that I will be, but yes, I think I could be good at this someday. He's like, okay, you have to do whatever it takes. And so I open another credit card. I hire a coach, buy internet leads, whatever that means in 2008. And I literally say to the coach, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Right. And so out of sheer desperation, I start powering through these sales tactics and picking up the phone, making the calls, writing the notes, seeing the people, all the things. Right. And I'm just muscling through my discomfort. And it's fine. I start closing deals. Like the formulas and the frameworks that the trainers teach you, they work. Okay. But if they're not aligned with who you are authentically, which is a bit of a buzzword, it can just feel like a grind all the time. And so I remember saying to my husband, I just don't know if I'm cut out for this because all these sales tactics just feel so self-serving. And then in 2011, I read the book, The Go-Giver, and it was a whole paradigm shift for me. If anyone's listening, I highly recommend The Go-Giver. And the idea was that you've got to be giving value above and beyond what you get paid to do versus a go-getter who's doing what they need to do to get what they need so that they can have what they need so they can feel safe, right? And so I developed a whole strategy that I later started teaching to real estate agents, and my business blew up in 2012. And it felt like a gift at first. I was earning more than I had ever expected. I was also having more fun than ever. I felt more authentic. I felt like I could be myself and just be of service to people, even if they don't need my services. And long story short is I found myself working 24/7, pregnant with my second child. And I went to a company dinner and I asked some other women who were ahead of me in the game. They were doing more volume than me. The kids were a little older. And I sincerely wanted to know, how are you surviving? How are you doing this? I am like a shell of myself as a person. And they admitted that after their kids go to bed, they work until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. So once again, I came home and said to my husband, I don't think I'm cut out for this. And this is 2012. So I almost quit the business. Honestly, I thought I can either suck it up and survive and pretend to be fine, like all these other people, right, that are living an illusion that they're experiencing freedom just because they're making good money, which I was grateful for the money, but I just wasn't willing to drown in it, in this exhaustion. Or I tried to shrink my goals. Like I could just do a little less. Let me just play a little smaller, right? And that didn't work either. And I almost quit, but luckily I got support on how to hire and how to scale the business. And so I became passionate then about taking leaps with fear along for the ride and seeing my business grow beyond my personal capacity as I learned to work less. And I just became obsessed with teaching it to anyone that would listen, really. And that evolved to become the content of the book, Pursuing Freedom, and later the podcast, and now, the community. But it's a long answer to a short question, but it's been quite a journey. So, you asked what was the defining moment. I mean, I would say it was all of those, right? It was like having my credit card declined and not feeling very free at all, even though I had time freedom, or, being at that company dinner, looking at the people I considered successful, which means money, and finding out they're just exhausted, and then feeling like, what am I aspiring to? So that was the whole idea, is like, where does the freedom lie? And it really always lies on the other side of the bold decisions that are made when you're done tolerating and you're not going to suck it up and survive.
This episode is made possible with support from Fabio Gula at Luminant Bank. If you're thinking about buying or refinancing, Fabio offers over 35 years of experience and helps match you with the right loan, not just a one-size-fits-all. This episode is made possible with support from Tyler McBroom at TRM CPA. They are a proactive CPA company helping business owners maximize profits and pay as little tax as legally possible. There's so much in there that I want to unpack. So like when you're talking about this, I'm thinking, okay, well, you've talked about this concept of, living a life where you don't need a vacation from it, right? What does that really mean to build that kind of life where you don't need a vacation from it? And how do you know, or how did you figure out, where was it in your success where you felt it no longer aligned with your life and what you wanted in your life?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, as a person who has been self-employed since that fateful moment in 2007, right? What I noticed is that for anyone else who's ever done that, taken that leap of faith, you forego the steady paycheck and you go for the 100% commission. In that moment, most would admit that they're after something different. And they're after a little more time freedom. They want control of their schedule. They want a more flexible schedule. They want more financial opportunity, right? More financial freedom. And then we kind of unpack that. What does that feel like? And we talked about that earlier. And then I say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your life and business feeling like how we just described freedom, ease, presence, joy, connection, travel, adventure, right? And most will rate themselves pretty low. And so we go a step further to say, okay, so with everything you think you are after, every external goal you set out to achieve, once I have more money, I'll feel safer, more relaxed, more at ease, right? And then sometimes we chase that at the expense of our energy, our enthusiasm. So we're becoming sort of a passenger on that speeding train. And we get there to the money, and all of a sudden we're exhausted and we're like, well, once things slow down, I will feel, right, more relaxed, more at ease. And so everything we think we want is in the feeling we imagine and the having of it. And I remember that for years I was running this breakneck pace, even after I hired help. Like I had so much fear around relinquishing control because I felt like me controlling it was what was keeping the ship afloat. And I got to a point many years ago where I remember being on a call with my coach and just saying to her, like, I am surrounded by the support. I have implemented all the systems, and I still feel like I'm treading water, just trying to come up for a sip of air. Like I'm in the ocean, holding up the ship that I built, patching the holes in the bottom of the boat, like pulling people overboard, and just worried all the time that this boat is going to sink, that I worked so hard to build, And at the end of the day, where I wanted to be was at the bow of the ship. I wanted to be charting the course. But in order to do that, we have to realize that there comes a point at which we have to surrender this illusion of control because it's all born out of fear. It's born out of fear the moment we take that leap and we ask ourselves, like, can I do this? Will I be able to do this? Like, fingers crossed, right? So we have uncertainty. The moment we take the leap, we have uncertainty. And that's the same whether we break up with that person or quit that job. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur. It's just like on the other side of the scary decision, like through door number 2, we don't know what lies ahead. And so we adopt that fear in that moment. And the fear propels us to develop behavioral habits of sort of that survival mode. Like, well, I have to, I need to, I should. And we're so outside of ourself. There is no, anyway, the long story short is that what I've been practicing, you talk about becoming. And I've been talking about unbecoming for the past 5 to 10 years. So unbecoming, overconnected, overcommitted, overwhelmed, stressing, rushing, striving, and accessing the feelings of what I'm after now, which is peace and ease and presence and love. And in prioritizing that well-being, it informs the decisions that I've made. And those decisions aren't made without terrifying fear. It's just that I'm not willing to compromise peace now for some illusion of control. And that's where the work lies. In my opinion, it's all up in our head. I mean, we don't get to outgrow the brain. So we have to play with this and, again, just abandon the illusion of perfectionism or control or not letting others down, and just listen to what the mind is saying and how it's been driving the bus. Whether things are good or things are bad, the fear is still there, you know?
Yeah. So I refer to our brain and our mind and the thoughts in it as the battlefield every day. Like I am on the battlefield every single day fighting some sort of thought or fear or, whatever it may be, the imposter syndrome that I have as a successful person that I'm constantly battling. What would you say? How could a person, and a lot of our listeners may not be entrepreneurs, they may be stay at home moms who are just trying to survive life with kids, or they may be young women coming into the workforce, wanting to do big things. Like, how do you navigate fear when you're stepping into a bigger version of yourself, of your life or your business?
Yeah. So, two parts to this question. One is what you just referred to, is that every day, you call it the battlefield, I call it the instrument. Like every day, if a guitar player picks up a guitar, they tune the instrument every single time before they play. And sometimes they have to swap out for a different guitar in the middle of the concert because it's gone out of tune. That's us. We could be out of tune when we're going to default to outdated thoughts that we picked up along the journey that are the fear. And they came from circumstances that sometimes weren't even ours to control. Like we've adopted the fear and insecurity of well-meaning adults. We adopt the fear and insecurity of the trainer who gives us the playbook that was born out of their own fear and insecurity. And so at the end of the day, I believe that, yes, we have to tune the instrument every day before we play the game, before we play the music. And sometimes a few times throughout the day, because life can happen and knock the wind out of our sails. And so understanding the importance of knowing yourself and what feels like light and joy and ease and peace for you, and not believing the story of your mind that it has to be hard. Like I need to power through, strive, stress, rush, race, right? So the first thing is to say that there's nobody we admire that isn't tuning the instrument or on the battlefield every single day. And ironically, we just had this conversation over the weekend about imposter syndrome, because I have always felt that as well, right? Like, how did I get in this room? How did I get on the show? Like, who am I to be here with you? I don't even, you know what I mean? And so that's the human experience, right? And so first things first is that when I noticed that feeling, I started to befriend it because I could see what was happening there in the mind. And usually if I feel that, it means I'm in proximity to people that I admire or I'm inspired by. And I believe proximity is power. So when you're in the room with people that, represent expansion for you, it's going to feel like you're stretching the limits of what feels safe. And that's your brain's job, is to keep you safe. And safe means same. Your brain does not like change. So if you get in the room with someone who's like, well, dang, these people are amazing, look at all these things they're doing, the threat is that we could turn that into a story of why it's not possible for us, which is the brain defending your fear. Like, well, here's why I can't. Here's why that won't work for me. Let me defend my fear. Let me let my fear drive the bus, rather than me saying, she's an example of what's possible, because she has fear too. And she did it anyway. So maybe I can borrow the belief I see in her. Maybe I can borrow her confidence until mine expands. And it gets kind of interesting, because your life then expands and you start to realize what a gift it is to feel that discomfort that we call imposter syndrome. But the other piece of it is that now I just feel like imposter syndrome is BS, because everyone in the room has a brain. Everyone in the room is on their own unique battlefield. So the challenge becomes, how do we absorb the inspiration without absorbing their outdated programming of self-doubt, hesitation, insecurity? Because we're all just projecting from whatever the programming is, and either how successfully or not successfully we've worked to dismantle that BS, right? And so from that place, it's becoming a really intimate observer of your thoughts. And so I do an activity like I write it out. I wish I could. And I put all the crazy things I wish I could do. Like, I wish I could take all my girlfriends on a girls' trip on a yacht through Greek islands. Like, I write out the craziest things, right? And then I listen for what the brain says, which is but. And then I write that out. Here's why I can't. And then I recognize that as fear. And then I just ask myself, is it true? Is it true, or is it just that I'm believing an imaginary future outcome that hasn't happened yet and it's negative? Because faith is the same thing. It's just believing, I wonder if it could work. What if I could? Which opens the doorway to possibility. And then paths unfold and doors open that are a mirror to what you're believing in. If you're believing it's impossible, if you're believing it has to be hard, then even if you power through and you get what you say you want so that you can finally feel good, your new fear will arise. What if I lose it? What if it doesn't last? Fear will be there no matter what. So like, we can just lighten up and not judge the fact that we have fear, and instead get really curious about it. And I'm telling you, I have not outgrown fear. Like, on the other, there's oftentimes over the many years of my life that I was certain, I was so sure, I can't even talk. I was so sure of what the outcome was going to be, that was going to be negative when I made these decisions that I went on to make. And then none of it came true. And I was like, wow, I let fear keep me in hesitation for years, talking myself out of that leap, or talking myself into convincing myself I'm fine when I'm not. And then I did it anyway and was like, oh my God, my life just got so much better. Like, the biggest risk became the smartest decision almost every time. And I'm like, huh. So it's like a muscle we can strengthen over time.
This episode is made possible with the support from Main Street Title. Main Street Title delivers your clear title on time, every time. This episode is made possible with support from Lauren DiCarlo at Singarli and DiCarlo. If you have any real estate transactions, they are the attorneys you want to be representing you, whether it's a sale or a purchase. Contact them. Right. So I love listening to things like this and talking to people like this. And I always say, okay, well, what am I going to walk away with? So what advice would you give to the listeners today that can help them get into their next chapter, whatever that next chapter may be? Like, what advice can you give them that will help them move the needle just a easy little bit? It doesn't have to be some big project that they need to do or overcome some big task, but what simple thing can they do starting today, starting tomorrow, that will help move the needle for them?
Yeah, it's one thing, and one thing in particular. And I jokingly say, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Stop outsourcing your attention, your energy, and in some cases, your emotion to the external world first thing in the morning. So first thing in the morning, when I come to consciousness, whether it's a bad night of sleep and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I can't fall back asleep, or it's 5 o'clock in the morning, or whatever time, it doesn't matter. Before I do anything, personally, I turn on some kind of guided meditation. So that could either, in the early days of learning this, it was the Calm app. It has a 10-minute daily calm every day. And it just kind of talks you through some thought processes and some breathing exercises. And this is me laying in bed in the dark, still half asleep, tuning the instrument. Because the default within seconds of becoming conscious is that your brain activates with all the overwhelm, the to-do list, the timeline, where you're not yet, what you need to be doing, what you should have done, what you didn't do yesterday. Like, that's just what the brain does. So I like to kind of grab the reins as quick as possible. these days, the algorithm on YouTube knows me well, and I'm super fascinated with all things neuroscience because some people will hear this and think that sounds kind of woo, but now they've been backing it with science and quantum physics. And I listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza, Abraham Hicks, this older British guy who's no longer alive, Alan Watts. I love the way he explains things, and his accent is adorable, so that's a bonus. And there's another guy that's been delivered to me recently that I like, Neville Goddard. And some of these are 12 minutes, 18 minutes, some are an hour and a half. I don't necessarily listen to the whole thing, but I listen until I remember what it feels like to be relaxed in my body. And then I either fall back asleep if I'm lucky at 3 a.m, right? Or I start my day with a totally different frequency, right? On the instrument. And then from there, I spend a lot of time, and I always say as long as it takes to get myself along the emotional and energetic scale from uncertainty, stress, worry, self-doubt, exhaustion, and overwhelm to enthusiasm, curiosity, enhanced confidence, fun, joy, lightheartedness. And from there, I act. And so the action is infused with a different frequency. And I can bring both versions of me into the day, but one feels like treading water and paddling upstream and I'm exhausted. And the other feels like, what if I don't have to figure it all out today? Who could I be of value to today? Who could I bring a smile to today? And then it changes the way in which I move through my day. Less, yeah, and just less gripping on any kind of outcome. And then all of a sudden, unexpected opportunities, synchronicities. It's really wild, but it is available, and it is an easier pathway to the same destination, which ultimately is abundance and freedom, which is available now to all of us.
Right. So good. So good. Okay. So where can our listeners find you if they want more of this and more of you?
Sure. So I have the podcast, Pursuing Freedom, which is a variety of topics around different ways in which people have arrived at their version of freedom. You can DM me on Instagram at Pursuing Freedom Official. I love hearing from people, and you'll see, Amrita, as you continue with this podcast, we put our show out there into the ether, and we're just hoping to bring some value to somebody. And then you think, is anybody out there? Is anybody listening?
Is anybody listening?
So if anybody's listening, send Amrita a DM. Just say, oh, congrats. Like, you did it. You launched a podcast. And it's so cool. I mean, it's so great. And I'm dead serious about this. When people reach out to me, I will usually say, let's jump on a call when I'm out on a walk. I love moving relationships from the internet to real life because I think great ideas are born out of conversations between two people. So I just love that. I love making friends and connecting with people and finding ways to be of value in the most unscripted ways.
Totally love that. Okay, great. So Pursuing Freedom offers coaching, training, and it's designed to help professionals build businesses that align with their life, their values, and their long-term vision. And I am so excited that you were actually here. If there is anyone out there who wants more of Erin Bradley, you can find her all over social media, LinkedIn, IG, and all that jazz. What is it that we or I can do for you? I always want to know, how can I help you? What can I do?
I would just maybe share this podcast with someone who needs it. And, go out in your day today with one objective. How can I be of value to every person I meet today? And see how that shifts the way you feel and then what becomes available for you. And then just continue to share that light with the world. You are that already, Amrita. You have that. You have that peace as your compass, and people in your presence can feel that. And that is the gift. That is the greatest gift we can give to anybody, is to regulate our own nervous systems, tune the instrument, protect our energy and our attention in order to share it in the best way possible. And I really believe there could be a ripple effect of goodness that comes from that.
I love that so much, so much. I'm so grateful for you being here and your time and sharing all of your wisdom. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of the Amrita Effect. Nothing is wrong with you. You are just in the middle of becoming. If this resonated with you, please share it and subscribe. And if you could, leave a review so this reaches more women who need it. Just take one small step forward, and I'll see you in the next episode.